Welcome to another Coffee with Samso. Today we're back at the UWA Club here in Crawley on the University of Western Australia campus. And today we've got Amanda Buckingham from Warriedar Resources Limited. The ASX code is WA8. Market cap as we speak is 70 million, share price about 15.5 cents. And they have approximately 7.9 million cash as of December 22. Projects as in just adjacent where the Golden Grove is located. Lots of big projects around them. Golden Range and Fields Fine is their two main projects. So Amanda, welcome to Coffee with Samso.
Thanks, Noel. Great to be here.
Look, Amanda, give us an intro about who Amanda is and the company, and then we can get stuck into your projects.
Certainly. So I am the Managing Director of Warriedar Resources. We hold two projects. Our more recent acquisition is the WA1 that you mentioned. So it's the Golden Range and Fields Fine projects in the Murchison. Now we sit right in the middle of the Murchison. It's a great land holding. Our second project is the Big Springs project in Nevada. Now I won't focus on that one today, but that was the original project of the company. So together we have a resource base of about 2 million ounces split between those projects. Both projects are, perfect tier 1 jurisdictions, but both right alongside producing mines. So in Nevada we're right next to Jarrett Canyon, a 10 million ounce deposit. And in WA we are right next to Golden Grove. Mount Magnet, Ramelius's Mount Magnet is to the northeast. Capricorn Metals, Mount Gibson Gold Project is just to our southwest. And then we've got Rothsay and Deflector, Silver Lakes producing mines not far to the west. So we sit right in the middle of the richly mineralised Murchison. It's a superb land holding. And the reason, I know I'm going ahead, but the reason we love this project is that historically the drilling has been really shallow and most of the mines in the area tap deep. So there's this entire search space that has not been explored that we have started to drill into.
A good point, that one there. I see in your presentation you talked about that, and the first thought that came to me was, this is the kind of narrative that was 10 years ago. Shallow drilling, the pits were shallow, and everyone sort of hopped on that bandwagon ever since then. And so when I saw that, I thought, oh, I haven't seen that for a while.
For a while, exactly. And that's very true. Like, it's actually hard to find a project that has there's a clear reason why it hasn't been explored properly. And so here, the previous owner, it was a producing mine, the plant that they had was configured only for oxide ore. So the whole focus of previous work was just to drill and find gold in the oxide layer. As soon as they hit fresh rock, they were not interested. As soon as they hit base metals or copper or anything else, not interested. So I think the average drilling depth is 42 metres across the entire area. We have 31 historic pits, about 72 kilometres of strike, an existing resource of just under 1 million ounces, and there's just hardly any deep exploration. And you understand why. If you're feeding a mill, that is the focus of what you're doing. Where they did drill deeper holes, and I had a closer look, there's about 9 holes that go deeper than 400 metres, which is hardly any, considering it's 804 square kilometres. But of those 9 holes, most of them extend the known resources. I know it's such a cliche, open at depth, but our resources actually are open at depth. Quite a few of them, we've modelled them up and the grade increases with depth. We just released some drilling results yesterday where we've extended one of the resources to the north, and we've shown that the actual mineralised body has at least another 150 metres of depth extent, still open. So it really is a remarkable opportunity. We understand why it wasn't drilled to depth before, but we're now working through the projects, and our goal is to reach 2 million ounces by the end of next year. And I think it's ambitious, but it's achievable. We have built up a solid team on site. We still have the plant, so of course we could use that later if we wanted to, but our entire focus now is on increasing the resource. We're not concerned about where the mill is, we just want to find as much gold as possible before the end of next year with regular updates and appropriate releases.
I think that's one of the things only sort of us technical people is going to pick it up, or guys who've been prospecting and looking. When I look at that map, and we had this conversation over the phone the first time we talked, and I said, oh, you're next to Golden Grove. And then I thought, hang on, you're right next to these people. And I can see the amount of drilling which you just spoke about. So that whole area, anyone would have thought this is a fantastic thing. Down deep, upstrip, downstrike, whatever it is a really good location, right? Whether you find, but at least you know there's a system in place that's cooking something.
Exactly.
I think that's really important to highlight.
Absolutely. Well, the whole Golden Grove is, I think, 3 kilometres from our tenement boundary. The rocks that host Golden Grove track onto our ground. Our ground has never been systematically explored for copper. It's quite remarkable. So we've flown an airborne EM survey recently where we're getting the results soon. We're working through that. On top of having Golden Grove right next door, we've got a historic copper mine on our ground. It's called Warriedar Copper. We don't know much about it at all. We know it was mined in the 50s and 60s. We've located a few of the drill holes. Completely not, like there's no JORC compliance. We don't really know the extent of it. So we've got the Warriedar copper mine, we've got Golden Grove right there, we've got Deflector in the next belt, Silver Lakes copper gold mine, and then interestingly Capricorn Metals Mount Gibson Gold Project just to our south in the same rocks, the same structure. Now it's a gold project, but it started its life according to the academics as a VMS system with gold. Gold came in later, like it was overprinted. So the whole VMS copper base metal potential is live and active in the belt. And I love that aspect of our project. Like, yes, gold is 100% our absolute focus, but in parallel, we're chasing the base metals and the copper. I believe we can do both. And I believe we've got good potential to, find some copper resources. Field's fine, so our project is broken into 2 parts. There's the Golden Range, which is the long, skinny sort of north-south project on the west, and that has most of the existing resource. And that's very much a gold play, or I would argue also base metals. But the part that's really interesting is the Field's Fine project over to the east. It's a layered ultramafic intrusion in a greenstone. It's got this whole corridor with elevated copper, gold, nickel, PGEs. At the end of it is that historic Warriedar copper mine. On the far eastern side is a small JORC gold resource. We've got a drill rig going out there next week to start drilling there. And that, we call it the Field's Fine Enigma. It is incredible. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but I do know that you've got this whole interplay of different commodities. It's a mess geologically, which is exactly what you want, for targeting. So I'm particularly excited about what we can achieve there, and we'll explore that area in parallel with the gold potential along the main belt.
I know you talked about it and we mentioned it, but to me, the whole concept of VMS is that they occur in groups, right?
Yeah, clusters,
in regions,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm sort of going back to the topic because I want people to understand that a lot of these gold or gold copper is actually part of the system, but it's just a sector or section of a VMS. Whether the VMS is like this, full, or it's half, or over time it's been bitten off somewhere and moved across, and there's remobilization of this and that.
Exactly.
But the key is there was a cooking system, which means it's fertile.
And no, that is a very good point. And that, I very much adopt the mineral systems approach to targeting anywhere. Like prior to running Warriedar, it's hard to change. We were called Nova not so long ago, so now we're Warriedar. But I ran a consultancy called Fathom for 15 years, and my approach is always to use the mineral systems model, determine what components need to have existed to generate your ore deposit. And so it's just a very logical way of thinking. Like, you need a pathway for the fluids, the gold-bearing fluids, say, to have got to that location. You need some sort of secondary shear with a larger volume of fluid in a smaller volume of rock. You need something to cause the gold to drop out of solution. You need something to cause it to stay there. And for me, as a geophysicist, not a geologist, it's a very logical approach to how you form an ore body in a certain spot. And that's the approach our team are using with the copper and the base metals as well as the gold. Like, what components were needed? Where are the key structures? Where are the rheology contrasts that might have allowed such deposits to form in the location? Where's the structural complexity? We've got fantastic data to allow us to target across this area. We know that the area is very fertile for gold and for base metals, so we've already ticked that box. We're not trying to establish whether the province is fertile. It is richly fertile. There are profitable producing mines all around us. Our goal is just to find where there is more gold and base metals within our own project area, knowing that there's been hardly any drilling. So it is a remarkable opportunity. We do need to manage it well. Like, there's so many targets, and so part of the acquisition process, I said to the team early on, like, we're not just going to acquire this and then go, okay, let's start targeting. So while we were doing all the admin, legal, the whole process of acquiring DC mines, at the same time we had the team working on the data, doing the targeting, ranking all the targets, working out what order we want to follow these targets up in, so that we have a nice systematic pipeline of targets and we can actually be releasing results throughout the year. And that was a criticism of the older Innova, and we were very aware of it. Just having our project in Nevada, a fantastic project, but the frequency between news, it was pretty long wavelength. And so now, by having the Australian project as well as the Nevada-based project, we've got the right balance of in our portfolio. We can focus on Australia now, and then when the snow melts and we can access Nevada, we can focus there. So it's a really great balance. I'm also not, like, someone asked me recently, does this mean you're not interested in Nevada anymore? Absolutely not. The reason I became involved with Innova in the first place was I worked as a consultant on the Nevada project. And I looked at it, and a bit in a similar way to this Australian one, I went, wow, like, you are right next to a 10 million ounce producing mine. There's been hardly any drilling, but where there has been drilling, you've already established a 1 million ounce resource. And now, Warriedar, we've collected all the data. Like, it's been several years of geophysical acquisition, soil sampling, mapping. We've got these great targets defined that are ready to drill. The limitation in Nevada at the moment is we're going through a permitting process to allow us to drill where we want to drill. But that's in hand. We've got a great exploration manager on the ground in Nevada. So I see Nevada as a really, it's classic elephant country. Like, individual deposits can be 40 million ounces. So we want that potential blue sky. But for now, we're focused on drilling in Australia, and I think we can get some really solid runs on the board, in the next few months, and really prove to our investors and to the market that this is a solid project, that these gold resources do continue at depth, and we're well funded to just continue drilling and do that. So,
I mean, when I look at that, and I guess a lot of investors would look at that, and there's lots of dots, lots of drilling, and people might say, oh, this has been drilled like a Swiss cheese. But yeah, I do want to remind people that there's a lot of Swiss cheese projects that have come up with, another 1 million ounces. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the Swiss cheese, you look at that and just take a depth slice off that drilling layer, remove the top 40 metres, and you've actually got not much left at all in terms of where the drill holes have pierced the ground. So, it is great that we can drill deeper. We've got a second rig turning up next week, both RC rigs at the moment. We will get a diamond rig out there later in the year. We just want to optimise, obviously diamond drilling is more expensive, we need a bigger program, but we're building up what we're going to do with the diamond rig as we move through the RC program.
And do you see, structure, people always say structure plays a big role and things like that. Do you see, is there any major, being a geophysicist, and that's why I sort of asking the question, do you see any major structures where that has sort of added to your confidence, saying, hey, this is good plumbing,
Absolutely. So there's the main shear, but like with any, government geoscience maps, that the location of that main shear is not perfect. We have incredible government data, so it's not a criticism at all. But in delving deeper into the data, using the gravity, the magnetics, the EM, all the different data sets at our disposal, we've mapped out the structural framework, both the broad framework and then the detailed framework. And we know where these structures track. We know exactly where we want to follow a long strike from existing resources. Not all the structures have a contrast in every data set, so we've got to use multiple data sets. It's often difficult to map the contrast between a felsic granite and a felsic sediment, where you get from the granite to the greenstone. In some of the EM data, we're pulling out structures that we just couldn't see in the magnetics. So we now, having used all the data together, and that's always the best approach, we now have a really solid understanding of the structural framework. Structure is critical. It's essential for gold. It's also essential for any copper-based metal mineralisation. It's basically showing you where you want to look. And then, your classic, where is the structural complexity along these main first or second order structures? We've mapped that out well. We have a great, it's overused as well, that whole pipeline of targets, but it's true in our sense. We've got some priority 1 targets that we want to drill immediately. And I also believe and of course we need to do our budgeting and our planning, but exploration, you need these decision points along the way. We don't know what results we're going to get in the next few months. So I've said to the team, every time, every 2 or 3 months we have these workshops, we look at the results that we've got, we reassess, redesign our programs based on what we now know to be true about our ground. You can't plan a whole year or two's program. It's completely unrealistic. You need to change your direction depending on what results you've received to date, and that's exactly what we will do. We will continue drilling, but where we drill and what we focus on will very much depend on the results to date.
A geophysics 101 kind of question. Obviously, you got heaps of data in both geophysics, both geochemistry, geology, everything else. If we took away everything that's not geophysics, would you say that that's a big hindrance to your step forward?
If we took away the geophysics, it would be...
we took away the geochemistry and the geology and only gave you geophysics.
The geophysics is actually really useful. I'm always a fan of using everything together, so geochem is very important where we are. I could certainly target and explore just using geophysics here, because with for the gold we want structure. For the VMS and copper, VMS are your classic ideal geophysical targets. They are generally more magnetic, more dense, conductive. It is the perfect geophysical target, a VMS deposit. So you're crazy not to use geophysics for any, and also it's a direct detection tool. Unlike
so you
gold,
wouldn't need geochemistry if you were targeting a VMS?
I would argue that. Our geologists would say, no, you need geochem. So there's always, friendly debate. I would say we could do it easily just with the geophysics.
Do you see any on your tenements?
I'm not going to answer that because we've just flown
That's
in the
a
end.
yes, boss.
I have to be very careful. It's very, we've got fantastic data now, and it will be very useful in terms of what we do and where we
from a
follow
punter's point of view, I think, to be honest, I didn't know who had this package before.
Yeah, well, that's actually the other thing, sorry to butt in, but it was very unknown because it was held by a private, so Minjar, a Chinese SOE private company, they operated the mine from 2013 to 19, and then it went into care and maintenance. but private companies, so no real releases, pretty much unknown. So it's only now that we're sort of bringing this story out and going, look, this is underexplored, right in the middle of the richly mineralised Murchison. Clear, like there's already, a significant gold resource, and we're only just beginning to tap into the copper and base metals. It's
I can't emphasize it more than we have, right?
Yeah.
But it is not going to happen tomorrow.
No.
It's still a long journey. All of this is a long journey game,
It is, and that's what I keep saying to our team. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint, with regular updates. Like I would say to an investor, look, we could release results at any moment that are completely game changing. So don't have us on a watch list for next September. That won't work. I would say get in now and follow us, be part of the story. We will constantly be releasing results. We're aiming for 2 million ounces by the end of next year with regular updates. But at the same time, we can only drill, like we've committed to drilling 40,000 metres this year. You can't do that overnight. That does take time, and the programs need to be managed and run properly, and we are focused on doing that.
Stepping away from that and going to Feels Fine, like I can see, it's one of those things that's like I call it no-brainer, whether it is or not.
Yeah.
I look at it and go, wow, that's fantastic, right?
Yep.
And you look at something that feels fine, it's great, but it's a bit detached. I can't see the immediate, hey, that's a great thing. So what is about Feels Fine?
So Feels Fine, it is your classic messed up chunk of rock that doesn't seem to fit.
What isn't in our game?
So it's a greenstone sequence that's folded, but there's a layered ultramafic sequence in the northwestern corner of it. Highly structurally upset. There's a corridor that seems to be the axis of the of the layered intrusion that goes, it sort of strikes northeast. Along that corridor...
This is the Warriedar.
Yeah, exactly. We're calling it the Warriedar corridor, which is actually hard to say. So along that corridor, there is elevated, like coincident copper and gold around these little porphyries. You've got quite a broad zone. In the project that we first acquired here from Red Dirt, it was called the Warriedar project, and that was actually our first foothold into this area. Like we had our eye on the Murchison for at least a year. Red Dirt sold us that project when they went to focus on their lithium project, so it was fantastic. We got our little project in the Murchison and we had bigger ambitions. Subsequently, we acquired DC Mines, but that Red Dirt project fits like a puzzle with the rest of the Feels Fine project, so now we own the whole package. But that corridor, it starts in the southwest with a historic copper mine, and then you go up the axis and you've got copper, gold, nickel, PGEs, and we really don't understand it. And I'm quite happy to say, look, we don't know what's going on. We know there's elevated, it's a polymetallic play, it's a messed up geology area. We will unravel the story and we will be drilling there pretty soon. So it's, I love that area.
This whole copper thing, Deflector is a big copper gold project, right? And there's so much copper in the system that was held back that project for a long time.
Definitely, and I didn't realise until I was talking to a few advisors in the last month or so, there's a lot of history with the whole copper gold deposits. Like decades ago, you couldn't process the copper with the gold, and it was not desirable. Like people would come across copper with the gold and go, oh, let's walk away from this. Likewise, the previous owners of this project, when they hit base metal mineralisation with the gold, they went, no, let's move away, that's not what we want. So the whole historic anti-copper sentiment is still, it's carried on from history in this area. No one has gone back in and gone, look, we are very comfortable now processing copper with gold. In fact, copper is one of the commodities that is quite desirable now. In terms of your portfolio, having copper and gold together, it's great. Gold's security and copper's future facing and all the positive electrification of the world. So we are very much focusing on, we think there's significant copper potential. It has not been looked at before, and it's one of our main focuses.
Yeah. I mean, in one of your slides where you says ample local analogues, I mean, you can see that those...
Exactly. Deflector, Golden Grove, Mount Gibson, you know,
I
and
mean,
the historic mine on our ground.
I remember walking into Rothsay when I used to work with Silver Lake. You know, it was a 10-gram dirt place, but not much around. It was almost neglected.
Yeah.
You know,
well, Rothsay, I love Rothsay as an analogue because it's high grade. Like I think it's just under 11 grams per tonne. Is that right?
10.9.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Its footprint is very small, but the rocks and the geometry of the greenstone at Rothsay is very similar. Like it tracks, the same geometry tracks onto our ground. We've got this large area with very similar geology, hardly touched in terms of any deeper drilling. Rothsay, I think it goes down to 400 metres or 630. I think Deflector's 630, Rothsay is 400. That's the other thing, the mines in this area, they all tap deep. Capricorn's Mount Gibson, the mineralisation is down to almost 1 kilometre. Golden Grove, they're mining at 1800 metres. Our resources, they're all very shallow. Like there's good evidence that the mineralisation taps deep based on the producing mines in the area. We don't know how deep ours goes. And even Mount Magnet, which is a bit further to the northeast, they are mining at 1400 metres up there. So you go, look, it has to be, okay, maybe our area is different and it doesn't have the depth continuity, but based, and I'm always data driven, based on what we see in the area, one would come to the conclusion that our belt is also a deep tapping mineralised system.
Oh, I think it goes all the way up to Q, you know.
Oh yeah, exactly, just keep deep.
Yeah,
you know?
they get very deep up that way as
depth
well.
extensive. That's good.
Yeah. You know, in terms of Warriedar, you know, the potential's there. What's sort of the going to make the investor go, you know, when I look at some of the results, maybe like the announcer you did, you know, a lot of questions I get from people is, you know, 1.5 grams, you know, what does that mean? It's like if you put 10 or 5, they go, wow, but then you're going to measure off against how much of that you got. And
yeah.
So how do you explain to those guys, you know, I mean, maybe a good way is just go through your announcement and just saying, how should they take that information?
So I think, Noel, the way, and that's actually a good question, because right now we're in a great position in that we have 1 million ounces. In terms of what we can get to and what style of deposits we're going to uncover, the answer is I don't know, but we're targeting high grade free milling gold. We believe there's potential for repeats of Rothsay on our ground, so that's almost 11 grams per tonne. So the goal is high grade free milling gold, but we've also got example like Mount Gibson. I think the grade there is 0.8. So there's also scope for a larger tonnage, lower grade operation on our ground using that sort of analogue. We've got the copper gold model of Deflector. I would say give us a few months to drill a bit more and get a handle on what we've got. Our target is, high grade free milling gold, ideally 2 million ounces by the end of next year with regular updates. The immediate opportunity for an investor is the fact that we are drilling now. We will continue to release results. We've got a second rig coming on next week. We could hit the sort of Rothsay style mineralisation at any time. Our focus is just to build the resource, how we commercialise it, and this is actually something that we're always thinking of. Like, we've removed the constraint of the processing plant. Like, we are not committed to just feeding the mill, and that means the search space is wide open for us. At the same time, like while we focus on increasing the resource, in parallel, we're always thinking, how do we commercialise this for our shareholders? What is the exit strategy? What is the path forward? And I would say quite comfortably, at the moment, we don't know because it depends on the resource that we define. But I say we don't know, but at the same time, we are constantly thinking, do we restart the plant? Do we upgrade it? Do we toll treat? Do we sell to neighbours? There are many options because we sit right in the middle of the belt. Having a good relationship with our neighbours, who often, many of them have hungry mills, they will need excess ore in the coming years. So my approach is to know your neighbours, have good relationships, build as much resource as you can, and find the optimal commercialisation path for investors as we go along. So certainly we will keep the market updated on what our plans are, but right now my main focus is finding more gold and copper. And then that puts us in such a great position to go, all right, how do we deal with this? What do we do with our resource?
It's quite a good point, because I've forgotten that you don't actually have to build a mill.
No.
It was staring right at me, and I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, we could upgrade, and we've got estimates on what that would cost. I don't know what we will do, but that plant gives us an accelerated pathway if we were to go down that route. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. It depends on what we find in the ground.
You kind of don't need to commit in some ways.
Exactly, and I'm not committing. We've got a fantastic geoscience team. Our focus is to find more resource, and in parallel we'll look at how we develop it.
And I can see on your board, Min Yang Wang and Damien Chen, the industry people.
Fantastic.
They've been around
board.
for a long time.
Yeah.
So that must be good support for you to tap that kind
100%. I am really pleased with the board. So Dr. Jim and Chen joined us recently as part of the DC Mines acquisition. He's got a fantastic background, experience. He's a mining engineer. His knowledge and guidance will be invaluable moving forward in terms of how we commercialise these projects. Dr. Min Yang Wang, I've been on the board with Min Yang for a couple of years now. We work really well together. He's extremely strategic, knowledgeable. He gets things done. Mark Connolly recently joined us as chairman at the end of November. Mark has been fabulous. I speak to him weekly. He has a great track record of actually moving these projects to a great outcome for shareholders, a great track record. We get along well, it's a great board. But most importantly, the board supports the management team. We're very hands-on, supportive, providing the guidance and resources that the team needs. I've got Stuart as a lawyer and engineer to manage site, and there's a lot. Like, we've got almost 70 tenements. There's a lot to manage and do. So Stuart manages that. Jeff is the head of geoscience. He's an extremely capable geologist, and there's a team under Jeff who are, the base is site. That's the other thing, because we've got such great infrastructure. A really good camp, comfortable air-conditioned offices, the big haul road, fuel fire, like everything's well set up on site. So we're not driving in and out of Perth all the time. Most of the geos are, site is their location. At the moment we're 2 on 2 off. We've got enough. We're building. The team is great, but we're bringing a few more people in just to get the right dynamic. I think it's very important to have the right team. We're well funded. We've got a second rig turning up with a solid geoscience team. We've got Harry, who's a great targeting geologist. He's just busy putting all the targets, all the ducks in a row basically, to help us drill in the right spot at the right time. So in terms of the board and the team, it's a fabulous team. Recently brought a CFO in.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Which is great for me. I like to know that's in hand.
Yeah, I think you work the same as me.
Yeah.
Too hard to think. And you're not that far from Geraldton either, so...
Exactly.
It's kind of...
And sorry to butt in, but you can drive, we can drive from Perth up to site. It's a 5-hour drive. At the moment, the crew are flying in, so it's all very convenient. I've done a lot of work in other countries, and right now I'm very pleased that we have these projects in Tier 1 stable jurisdictions, easily accessible. In Nevada, Steve McMillan can drive to site in an hour and a half. In WA, it's a 5-hour drive or a short flight. There's sovereign risk is low, access to infrastructure, everything is comfortable with Tier 1, these sort of jurisdictions. And WA and Nevada, it doesn't get much better in terms of the prospectivity and the license to operate.
It's like what we just discussed off camera. like Singapore, and it just works.
Exactly, it just works.
Just works,
That's it.
you know?
Yeah, that's it.
It's hard to explain, right? It just works.
This is I think my 30th year now working in this industry, and I've worked all through Southern Africa. I lived in Russia, worked in Canada, the US. Like I've worked globally on projects with a lot of different people, and having these projects that we own in the middle of active mining provinces with a clear reason why they haven't been developed, it's an exciting proposition. You don't often find that. So I think we've got the portfolio now that we really wanted. It took us a while to find what we wanted. Like the bar was set quite high. We looked at a lot of projects, but I mean, even last night we had a dinner just to celebrate getting to this point. It was lovely to have the whole board and management team just going, right, it's a nice point to celebrate. And I said to them, right, tonight we celebrate, back to work tomorrow. But it is, we've got these projects, we've got funds and drill rigs on site. There's no real impediments to pushing forward, and it's exciting.
So, get to this point now. I know you've spoken about it. Maybe just summarise it down. Like, what's the news flow for the eager beaver investors out there for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we put out a press release yesterday with our first assay results. Now that was a little. We were not drilling under the pit at Wind and Well. We were seeing whether the mineralisation to the north has depth extent. So it was risky in the sense that these were not directors' holes. They were trying to answer the question, does this ore deposit extend north and south? The answer is yes, it does extend further to the north. We're expecting results from the southern holes within a week. We will have regular assay results coming in to build this story. So I would say to the investor, join us now. There are regular results coming out. We will update the mineral resource at the appropriate time when we deem it to be, at some stage this year. We have flown a big EM survey that if I can just hide away and look at for a few days, we'll get those results out, and they will be I won't comment on that, but it's fabulous. Basically, an EM survey, you can shine a torch on the ground and look for conductive bodies that may be copper. We've done the survey. The ground has never been looked at properly for copper before. It's a fabulous position to be in, to have that data about to be released. A second drill rig on site next Friday. Constant assay results being released to the market, so it is a busy year ahead. I
would be very surprised if nothing blipped on your EM, considering nothing has been done for that commodity in that region. I mean, if you said to me you flew EM around that area and there was no signature, I would be falling off my chair. That's not knowing the history or what is there. I'm just thinking, you gotta have something come up in that area.
Absolutely.
But I think that's fantastic. Great way to get an introduction. I'm actually glad we did this because I love Golden Grove. I've always have, but I don't think I've seen anyone with that amount of that kind of package there anyway, which is fantastic. Florence Drummond, who's helped us before, she's worked with a group called Kick. They're a group of First Nation suppliers to our industry, and they've got this coffee here, and I'm giving it to you, but I'm only giving one now because you spoilt my surprise before the
I said, what is that?
Yeah. But anyway, coffee's yours, and the bag's from us to help you carry it home.
I love my coffee. I can't start the day without coffee. So
that's why it's called Coffee with Samso.
It's actually lovely to have this. It's a very different. I like this forum where you can talk comfortably about what you're doing. A little bit more time. Very comfortable. So thank you. It's been very enjoyable chatting.
Well,
with you
we'll keep following your journey and make sure when you update, you can come pet the rooster.
Perfect. Thank you, Noel.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.